What up, everybody? Friday evening greetings to you, and welcome to another episode of Water for the Thirsty. We're back in the house again, third Friday in May, 20th episode of this year 8. 4 more to go before we close out the year, not the calendar year, but our cycle a year. Good to have you guys with us, of course. It's regular crew, Lorian, Jerome, Kendrick, and Courtney. And we're here to chop it up. Talk about some of the things that we learned, wrestled with, were intrigued by, impressed by, motivated by, led by in the Word through the books of Mark, Psalms, because I think we're still reading Kendrick's favorite book. And Courtney, where else are we? Samuel and Chronicles. We're in the story of
Samuel and Chronicles.
Yeah, we're in the story of David. So that's where we are. If you don't already have a copy of the reading plan, you can download it, from the website or from the App Store. It's an app on your phone, and you can read with us. That's kind of where our conversations are coming from. So thank you for joining us. We appreciate you. And we're going to dive in. Oh, sorry, I'll probably get a message. Kerrick, talk to me. I'm going to leave with you today.
Yo, it's been good seeing you guys, man. It's been a long time. I had a COVID family for a little bit, and then graduations and all that stuff. So I got a question in 1 Samuel 28. I just relocated downstairs and I left my Bible upstairs. So I believe, let me see if I can pull up on my phone. 1 Samuel 28. And it would be down towards the end. It's when when Saul goes and to the medium to see, because he wants to talk to Sammy.
Mm-hmm.
And so my question is this. Was it really Samuel he was talking to? And the prophecy came true.
Mm-hmm.
So who was Saul talking to?
What does the Bible say?
Samuel.
So what are you asking?
So was it really Samuel he was talking to, or Samuel who he was talking to? So, because for instance, so I know. So I went back and started thinking, and I was like, with the children, when Moses went to Pharaoh, he threw down his staff and it turned to a snake, and then they threw down their staffs and it turned to a snake. I'm assuming the snakes were real, right? Which means they were live, blood pumping, all of those things, right? Which means that either God turned theirs to a snake or Satan had the ability to turn their stuff to a snake. So does Satan give life? I'm like all like. His prophecy came true.
Okay.
Which threw me through a loop. If the prophecy comes true,
then it must be God. It must be a prophet, right?
I mean, by definition, prophecy, right?
The snake in the garden, did what he say come true?
Yeah.
Does that help or hurt the argument?
I guess I didn't even go there. So let's just stick with the first question. Was it really Samuel?
Jerry, I'm gonna go with you because you probably had this conversation with your parents.
Yeah, sort of, kind of, in a way.
Uh-huh.
Yes, it was. Well, it wasn't Samuel. And yes, the prophecy did come true, largely because perhaps the greatest scholar of the Bible is the devil.
Okay.
Um, I'm sure in your line of work, Henrik, you're probably well respected and well compensated because you're an expert at what you do, having had, I mean, you look like 25, right? But having had at least 5 years of experience doing what you're doing, they'd respect you and compensate you. We have no idea how long before man fell. We don't know how long Satan was in heaven. We don't know how long before, because it just says the earth was without form and void. So there's gaps that we have no idea how long he's been around.
Correct.
Just digesting stuff, assimilating stuff. I mean, I'm sure you could like look at your wife's body language from across a room and know.
Ooh, I think you said my wife's body. I was like, whoa.
You'd be like, hey, time out.
Okay, we're good.
You can look at her body language from across a room and know, okay, that's the cue to come get me, let's go get me another drink, whatever the case is, right? So this guy's observing things for however long. He can put 2 and 2 together. He's a scholar of the Bible, of prophecy, of you name it. So him coming and saying, okay, here's what's going to happen, and there being a great likelihood that it will actually happen based on what he understands, it's almost to be expected. That's the first part. The second part is we need to be mindful that we only exist in 3 dimensions. But there's nothing that says only 3 exist, which is why we can't, unless angels or demons choose to show themselves, we can't see them. And there are things that they're able to do in and out of dimensions and make things appear a particular way and morph things and all sorts of things that we just can't explain with our finite minds in our little 3D box, right? So seeing a snake move, seeing some other kind of apparition, it's possible to manipulate things. I mean, I don't know if you all saw, there was a thing with David Blaine where he was walking on the Thames River, right? So he's basically showing everybody, hey, look, I can walk on water. He didn't say how he did it, but there he is, and they're showing drone footage from all these different angles to show that there's no strings attached, there's no glass hallway in the water, nothing. It's just what he's walking on water. Mm-hmm. So if as a human we can mess with things and make things appear a particular way much more, and I think that is why even when it came to the definition of prophecy, the Bible says, you have to try these spirits. It's not just if it comes true, it's all these other things, including how they're living their life, etc., etc. Because if the only thing is Nostradamus had prophecies that came true, Hitler had prophecies that came true, that doesn't mean they're divinely inspired, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just looked at it from the perspective of this guy has been crafty at doing what he's been doing forever. So there are things he will say that will probably pan out. And there's just a lot of stuff he's capable of that in terms of manipulating matter and the atmosphere that we can't even begin to comprehend. He
but
can't give life.
The next day?
Yeah.
The next day is a big deal.
Oh, why not?
The next day?
Why not?
Well, there are a couple of other thoughts. While I agree with Jerry, there are a couple of other thoughts, and I'm just going to not play a adversarial role, but just to throw other things on the table for us to consider. The first thing is that this story is written after the fact. It's not a real time.
Mm-hmm.
So the author is telling you things with a conclusion already in mind that can affect and influence the edit.
Okay.
So it's not a live stream.
So just to be clear, you're saying that the author could be telling the story and it's not necessarily the next day.
Or because the author knows it's the next day, he crafted the story with that in mind.
Okay.
It's a potential possibility. We don't know for sure.
Sure.
That's why I'm saying it's just other things for us to consider.
Okay.
Right. Here's a example. City of Ramses. Right. Right. So let's go to Exodus. Here's an example. Exodus 1:11. So they say here, so they put slave masters over them, oppressed them with forced labor. They built Pithom and Ramses as store cities for Pharaoh. Now, the writer of Exodus is talking at a time when the cities of Ramses exist.
Mm-hmm.
However, at the time that this story happens, that city had a whole different name. So he's telling you about where the location is by saying the city of Ramses.
But it's no longer the city of Ramses by the time the writer is writing it.
No, it is, because that's what the readers will understand. At the time that the storehouses were built, it was not
gotcha.
called
You're saying it wasn't.
right?
Gotcha.
He's trying to tell you is there a city in Maryland that the name has changed, or it was something else and it is something else now?
I don't know. But yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Right? So that is a consideration, that sometimes the writer is based on his audience and what he's saying and who he's talking to, and adjust the details to make it make sense to the reader. Right? Because he's telling the story in hindsight. So I'm not saying that that's what is taking place in this case. I'm saying that's a consideration to be included in trying to figure out what it is.
Okay.
In the story, Saul does not actually see anything. Saul is listening to a lady tell him something.
Because I did it.
Wow. So all right, so let me go back to the story.
Have you ever because the story is similar to, when you go in to see the lady, Miss Cleo.
No, I've never been to see Miss Cleo.
No, but you know what that looks like.
But I know who she is. Yeah.
No, what it looks like when someone goes to see that. You've seen like movies or videos where they go in and they sit with the lady and the lady tells them what she's seeing.
I have a couple of friends that do that foolishness.
And they say they're seeing someone who kind of looks like this, and the person goes, "Yeah, that's my uncle," or whatever. And they start to get a vibe and they start to tell you stuff about what they're seeing. She does that same thing here. Verse 13.
Correct. So she's the one describing what's happening. Correct. So verse 13, don't be afraid, the king told her. What do you see? I see a god coming up out of the earth. She said, what does he look like? Saul asked. He is an old man wrapped in a robe, she replied. Saul realized it was Samuel, and he fell to the ground before him. Why have you disturbed me by calling me back? So yes, so he never sees him.
Right.
Samuel asked Saul, because I am in deep trouble. He's talking to him. The Philistines are at war with me, and God has left me and won't reply by prophets or dreams. So I've called for you to tell me what to do. But then Samuel replies, but he's not seeing. So I'm with you. Learn that. But they're talking back and forth. Well, someone's talking. Saul is talking to somebody.
Yeah. I get the impression though that he's talking, that basically the witch is the one telling him what Saul is saying.
But it says Samuel replied.
Well, yes, Samuel replied to the witch.
Replied. And she's saying, well, this is what which is what, again, what.
So you guys are reading this as her translating what Samuel is saying?
Well, I'm reading it as the author is telling the story, and he set the context by saying Saul never interacted with a character. He's interacting with the lady. So if Samuel is replying, it can be inferred that the lady is telling him, because he's not interacting with a figure. She is. And that was set up clearly in a couple of verses 13 and 14.
But there's a couple of things, right? I guess my question is, he asked, what does he look like? Saul asked that. This is verse 14. She responded and said, he is an old man wrapped in a robe. Saul realized it was Samuel and fell to the ground before him. Before him has to be like, there has to be something for me to be before.
My Bible has, then Saul knew it was Samuel, and he bowed down and prostrated himself with his face to the ground. Doesn't say before him.
Okay. What version is that?
The NIV.
Okay.
We could read it in other verses and in other versions and see. Courtney, what version you have there?
Well, I have opened up before me KJV.
What does it say?
It said Saul perceived that it was Samuel, and he stooped with his face to the ground and bowed himself.
Yeah.
Correct. So Amplify says his face to the ground and paid respect.
Right.
So okay, so not necessarily before him.
Yeah.
But then it says, then Samuel said to Saul, why have you disturbed me by bringing me up?
Right. So remember, you have an author who's telling the story.
Saul answered, I am greatly distressed, for the Philistines are making war against me. God has left me. But someone's telling this story accurately and then prophesying.
Somebody's writing the story, understanding how it went in hindsight.
Oh my gosh.
Somebody's not, because sometimes, so and
Then how did this pass muster then? Why isn't this with the other books that didn't?
Because that's where I was getting to next. The next thing I was going to say is, does it matter if it's Saul or not? What's the point of the story? Right?
Mm-hmm.
What point is the author trying to make?
Well, the authors, I guess there are a couple of different points. One is to depict how far Saul is strayed away from God, and even in the conversation, he readily acknowledges that. So it literally, I guess, it goes back and references Samuel's prophecy, right? That the Lord is going to rip this away from you and all this kind of stuff. It goes to further depict how far Saul is gone. And then it just talks about, and then at that point, it just talks about the end of Saul.
Right. So does the story change? Does the point change whether it's a ghost or actually Samuel or the devil or what? Does the story change?
The point doesn't change, but there are a lot of things that change. There are a lot of things that, yes, the overall point is well taken.
Well, let me ask it this way. Does the point change for the audience of the story? Not for us who have our own theological bend. For the people who are receiving the story from the author of 2 Samuel or 1 Samuel, does anything change for them?
Probably not. Unless you think Samuel came back.
And if they are in a space in their time in history where it's not really clear what the distinction is between dead and not dead and spirits and whatnot, does that factor in at all, the cultural time frame and how people thought and believed at that time about dead and death?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So is he? I guess.
Here's all I can say is that none of us know what the afterlife is like, so none of us could really answer that question. We can make and we can accept conclusions like the one Jerry made, which is one I tend to lean towards, but that would still be a supposition. That Jerry's supposition, as well articulated as it is, and can be supported by all kinds of other scriptures, is still just a supposition.
Correct.
So we don't know.
No, we don't know.
Okay.
And there's no way to know for sure, because none of us have been to the afterlife and know really what happens there. We have what the scripture says about the state of the dead, and so that allows us to.
Well, I guess my thing. If that's the state of the dead, if based upon,
But even that, Kenrick, is debatable, because what the scripture says about the state of the dead is that they don't know anything, and they have no more part in this world.
mm-hmm.
Depending on the angle in which you look at that, it doesn't say that there's not something happening in an afterlife. I'm not saying there is. I'm just saying that scripture doesn't definitively put that down. And then there are other things written in other places that suggest
Could be.
There could be more.
Sure.
But nobody knows, because nobody has gone and come back.
Gotcha.
And the point that the author was making when he made that statement was simply, when you're dead, you're not coming back. So make the most of what you're doing here. He wasn't even trying to make a theological statement about the afterlife.
Sure.
He was making a statement about when you're gone,
Yeah.
you're not here anymore. You can't contribute to this life anymore. And that is true whether there's people on the other side or not. I mean, Jesus then goes on to tell a story about Lazarus and the rich man, that even though, it's a parable, the fact that Jesus is using that illustratively to make us the point of a
Correct.
story kind of doesn't put this to rest either, right? The fact that he's leveraging that kind of imagery for his conversation suggests that we don't know what happens after people die, what they experience and what they don't.
So my takeaway is that it's possible dead people can prophesy.
I don't know.
That's not the takeaway I was.
The takeaway?
Yeah,
I should say that to the end.
Oh man.
When Samuel comes, or whatever form of Samuel that was, he wasn't aware of what was going on to support what Jared was saying. Like, he's like, why are you bringing me up? So that means he didn't know from whenever the time he tapped out to that point. He didn't know what was going on.
Agreed. But once they brought up to speed, he was very quick to say, "Yo, this is what you did. This is what and this is what's going to happen to you. Right. I'm out. Going back to sleep." So, I hear you.
And
I hear you. I guess not having an answer, I guess, is fine. It's just there's no answer.
Well, yeah. There is no definitive answer that you can tell one way or the other from the scriptures.
Correct.
Anything that you come up with would be speculative and
okay.
In favor of it being Samuel or not.
Sure.
What we do know is, and that's why I went back to the Genesis scripture, because there are things about the life and the world outside of what we can see that exist and are true, right? Like when the serpent said, "You shall not surely die," he knew something about how this thing goes that was not different from God said, but an addition. I would say an addition to what God had already said, right? Because what God said was true and it did happen the way God said it. But what the serpent said was also true. So both were true, right?
Correct.
And so I'm just saying, we don't know what is the point of the story.
And then going back to what Jerome's saying, so going back to the thing, so Satan does not have the ability to give life.
Let me rephrase that in God. He cannot procreate. That is biblical. That he can't procreate.
But he has the ability. Well, Let me finish. So I was saying he doesn't have the ability to give life. He has the ability to, based upon your description, he has the ability to portray life in different ways.
Yep.
Right? Whether it's actual life or not, he can make it seem as if it is alive.
Yep.
There are a lot of things that he can do. Yes.
But giving life, he doesn't have the ability to do. That's what separates him from God. One of the
I
That's
feel.
what we believe.
What we talking about?
Sorry. Eric was asking, was it Saul or Samuel or not? And so I was taking him around the block to process things about that to help us kind of make sense of, is it Samuel or not, and or does it even matter if it's Samuel or not? And some Bible reading principles that help us to deal with some of those kinds of questions. That's why I mentioned the nature of the way the Bible writers write is important to being able to make sense of what's being said. Understanding that the writers are telling a story to a specific group of people and understanding what their understanding is and trying to elicit that is also a good Bible reading technique. And so I was making those points in my response to Kenrick's question. Does that help?
Oh, we're talking about Duppy. But yeah, that makes sense.
And then that's the other thing, right, Kevin? There are almost in every culture, there are people who believe in spirits of various kinds that do all kinds of things. I mean, like, for example, we're reading in the book of Mark where this demon-possessed man had almost 1,000 demons in him, and they get sent into pigs, and the pigs jump off the cliff. Like, what's that? And how did the demons enter the pigs? And how did the pigs have the awareness to decide they don't want to be occupied by these demons and throw themselves into the ocean to die so that the demons don't have anywhere to live? Like, how does that all work?
I never thought about the pigs doing that.
So why do you think the pigs run? Do you think the demons kill the pigs after they asked to go in there?
I never got that far.
No. The demons jump in the pigs and the pigs say, nah, but the demons jump in the pigs and the pigs jump in the water and they drown themselves.
Which is why we should eat pig.
Oh,
They're smart enough to not be occupied by demons.
I mean, even the unclean can anyway.
wow.
But go ahead.
So my point is that, you know, there are these things that are not things that we have full understanding about that exist around us.
Sure.
So is that a necessary? I don't want it to feel like a cop-out, but to the point that the author is making, would it change anything one way or the other?
I don't know. So to your earlier point, it would not change the overall thought, the general thought the author is trying to convey. Which it is not about the medium, nor is it about Samuel. The main character in that is still Saul. So I get that. It's just, the way things happen also, are important. And so as I'm reading, I never really thought about it. And it's kind of, but I was like, huh. But yeah, no, I hear you.
Yeah. And the commentary from Saul, the Lord has predicted what he has done through me. He has torn the kingdom out of your hands and given it to one of your neighbors. How much of that is being written in to Saul's mouth by the author?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, but I guess we could do that with everything that we read in the Bible. Right? I mean, it's all written and it's all from someone else's perspective. and it's easy to put on that it's Holy Spirit or driven by the Holy Spirit or inspired by God, but they're all individuals. They have their own different styles of writing. So if that's the case, then how much of the Bible is then, we see Paul do a lot of it. So,
Yeah.
so how much of it is actually,
Or how much of it matters enough towards the point? And I think that's why the question is, what's the point, right? Because, and I'll say this, one of the things I learned in one of the archaeology classes they made me do is that in the time of many of the Bible writers in other societies, the kings write their records and say that their gods gave them the victory and their God told them to do this and the God told them to do that, much in the same way the Bible does, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
the way you can write history,
right? But one of the things
in the way you can rewrite history,
or you can write
based
your beliefs inform the way you see the world that you're interacting in, right?
Correct. From your perspective, yeah.
Right. So that's why, to me, the point that the author is making about Saul is primary, and the way that they tell the story is almost like in all the Robin Hood movies, for example, that we watch about Robin Hood. Each story is different. In some stories, Little John is black. Some stories he's white. He's a big, tall dude with a fat wife. Other times, he looks different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does it really matter what John looks like? Because you could cast anybody into that role. What you know is that Robin had a friend who was John, who relied on, and they had a certain kind of relationship. That's consistent through all the stories. And so one of the things that's important in processing the Bible is remembering that the God of Israel is the main character. And no matter what writer it is writing, from whatever perspective, from whatever time, from whatever station in life, their view of God kind of holds consistent through all the stories.
Yeah.
The thing that God is important to God is consistent in all the stories. The way that he interacts with people is generally consistent through all the stories. The nature of the people is generally consistent through all the stories. And so we could get bogged down in the details and find value in them, or we can hear the messages that are being written and and read the stories in the context in which the author is trying to make, or the point that the author is trying to make. And it becomes a challenge for a lot of Bible believing Christians because they were, I would say, mistaught in terms of their understanding of how to manage the Bible. And like, the Bible says in this verse, so it is this, right? And as opposed to making sense of what the Bible is saying and being able to lift out, who God is, who we are, and how we need to relate to each other as a result of that.
No, I'm with you.
Jared, do you think that is actually part of the strategy?
The strategy of who or what?
Well, strategy is the devil, I guess. Because if we get it wrong, if we get the interpretation wrong, then everything else then becomes challengeable or erroneous, right? It's kind of, if you have a map to get to somewhere and you have the map upside down, right? You're gonna find yourself in a whole heap of trouble. And I know, especially if you come from a conservative background, we tend to focus a lot on, like you said, well, this verse says this, so it has to be exactly this. And we miss what the real narrative or the broader picture is, right? And we get hung up on all sorts of inconsequential things. I mean, I've seen people spend hours debating, some little nuance because of how John describes something as opposed to Matthew, let's say, which makes no sense. Because even if all of us are standing on 4 different corners outside your home right now, we're describing the same home, but we all have slightly different perspectives.
Correct.
So because I mightn't see your chimney and Kenrick might, it's kind of like pointless to argue about that little nuance, right?
Yeah, and I was reading another book about reading the Bible through Western eyes and how that affects the way we see the Bible. One of the points that they were making is that where we come from and how we experience the world causes us to focus on different things. Like people from America, like in the story of the parable of the prodigal son. When people from America were asked how the son got in trouble or what contributed to the son being in trouble, their focus was on his righteous living. When people from Russia were asked the same question, their emphasis was the famine.
Well,
Americans skip over the famine. The famine is a background detail. For Russians, the famine is a central part of the story. There was a famine in the land. That is a big contributing factor. So, to your point, depending on where we come from and how we see the world, we'll emphasize different things. And that's the same thing in the Bible writers. And if I know how the story ends and I'm writing the story to make a point to you, I'm organize my story in such a way that it makes the points that I wanted to make.
the facts remain the same, but I'm just arranging them together.
We do it. We watch it all the time in movies, right? That's what.
The facts remain the same. The problem is that the facts are then shaded in a certain light to take you a certain direction.
Correct.
So, yeah.
And please bear in mind, even when we say shaded a particular way, when the author was writing it, he didn't know that this would carry on for thousands and thousands of years, and you'd have people from,
He wasn't writing to you and me.
Yeah.
He was writing to certain people that had a certain understanding at a certain time. So you have to understand what would they have received, what would have been important to them, how would they have received this message in order for us to even get application to what matters to us. Like, what are the details that actually matter? Yeah.
Yeah.
And while you can make observations about things in life by the things that are said in the story, and you can make, fairly informed conclusions, there are some things that the story doesn't tell you, and probably because the author didn't think it was relevant to the story. Like, for example, how many of the Bible authors of Jesus spend any real time in his childhood? Like,
Zero.
Jesus had a whole childhood. How much do we know about it?
Maybe. I thought he skipped.
Right? And of the stories in the childhood, which are the ones that are chosen?
Yep.
The ones that make the point about whatever the point that Matthew was trying to make when he included the story.
Yeah.
When we talk about the miracles, same thing. We know a handful of stories, but they weren't trying to write comprehensive biographies of Jesus Christ.
Sure.
They were picking the stories that help to make the points that they want to make about Jesus, because these are the most information rich. And that's what writers do. That's what they teach us to do when we go to school. We use the examples that help us make the point. I'm sure there's a whole lot you could write, but if you do write all of that, then you stray away from the point, like by adding all those details. That's what we call editing in any kind of thing. How important is this to that? Yes, it's true, and it did happen. Here's another example. Like, there were a lot of people before the canon was formed. The book of Enoch accompanied Genesis because it provided details of the stuff that wasn't included in Genesis. Genesis tells you this happened, that happened, that happened, and then the author moves on. He gives you a very quick synopsis of Cain and Abel. The writer of Enoch spends a little bit more time there. Now, it doesn't make it into the canon, so we don't really pay much attention to it, but there are people who wrote in the Bible who quoted from that book. Right?
Correct.
Peter is one of them. Right? So it means that it was in their understanding these things.
But Jared doesn't, even the Bible itself mentions that way, it calls out other books and says, the writings of this can be seen or if you
Yeah, you
basically if
saw
you
it
need
in
more information, this it's in whatever, but those, for whatever reasons, those books weren't included.
Right. And even the writer was saying, I'm telling you this, but if you need more information, reference that other book, because those details aren't relevant to what I'm telling you here now. And so I'm harping on that point so that when we read the Bible, we have a better understanding of how to manage the material. And that helps us to elevate some things and de-emphasize some other things. But it's good to wrestle them out anyway, because you never know what you can find in the process.
Sure. Cool.
What happened, Sharika? Why are you looking like that?
I think I walked in at the wrong part of the story, but it makes sense to me.
Oh, well, yeah, you've graduated Bishop thing, so. Did you have anything in your queue?
No.
All right. Courtney, I'm coming to you next.
If I had a question,
Look, if you had anything, it didn't have to be a question. It could be, oh man, this was powerful this week. Or it could be, that was a good reminder this week. Or I never saw that before. That was just interesting.
Did we answer Lorraine's question already?
Which one? The one about
the one in the chat.
Yeah.
So Lorraine's question, and I'm allow her to walk us through it, was a tie-in to the last conversation. So that would be an extension of the previous conversation, which wouldn't be a bad thing for us to delve into because Kenrick didn't get a chance to participate in that. So
I didn't mean to cut off Courtney. So Courtney, if you had something, that was more of a reminder. I probably should have texted that.
I mean, I'll let you lead out. It's cool. That was a good suggestion.
I don't even think you had to let her lead out. She was just like,
Yeah,
I'm going to lead out.
Yeah.
Kenrick, what we don't need is you coming back from the dead with your nonsense. Okay.
I'm just saying. you bully ball.
Oh.
Go ahead, Courtney. Go ahead.
Nah, for real, it's good. Let's move on. That's fine.
all right, Lauren, they're interested in your question from the chat this week, and the people online don't know what it is. So set up the context of where we were, what you was thinking, and then let us have your question.
Okay. Well, we were talking about confession last time.
Confession?
Yeah.
Okay.
What was necessary for a confession? And, we went back and forth. I was stuck on the whys being important. I mean, as I thought about it over the past 2 weeks, I was like, well, the why is important, period, for me. But it's not necessary immediately. Like when the person says whatever, like it's not like we're sit down having one conversation. I'm like, okay, why? And like it's more like a series of conversations that happen future tense that include the why. Delve into that a little deeper. But then I thought, so I thought of baptism for some reason, and why do we do baptisms in public? Because I think one of the things we were saying the last time was, do you have to? What was it? Do you have to confess to the person, or can you just change without saying anything to the person? If I'm correct. And so it made me think of baptism, and my random question was, why do we do baptisms in public? Is it necessary to be in public? Can you just get baptized in your house and still be baptized? Like, is there what's required for baptism? Like, what constitutes you as being baptized?
So I would ask this question. Acts chapter Acts chapter 8. Let's read from verse 26. Acts chapter 8 from verse 26.
Acts 8:26.
While you're looking it up, Batman, the Light Knight, says Jesus was in Egypt with his brethren during his childhood to fortify himself in the Father's plan for him. Okay, so that's why the others didn't talk about it. I guess is the point that you're making. All right, so Lauren, are you there?
Acts 8, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, Courtney,
Acts 8, what?
26.
Oh, okay.
Courtney, you ready to read?
Go ahead, Courtney.
LeVar Burton. It's reading Rainbow in this.
Oh, that's the jam. All right, so verse 28,
Mm-hmm. From 26.
26.
8:26. Acts 8, verse 26.
Make sure I'm in the right one. All right, I'm good. As for Philip, an angel of the Lord said to him, "Go south down the desert road that runs from Jerusalem to Gaza." So he started out and he met the treasurer of Ethiopia, a eunuch, great authority, Kendaki, the queen of Ethiopia. The eunuch had gone to Jerusalem to worship, and he was now returning. Seated in his carriage, he was reading aloud from the book of the prophet Isaiah. The Holy Spirit said to Philip, "Go over and walk along beside the carriage." Philip ran over and heard the man reading from the prophet Isaiah. Philip asked, "Do you understand what you're reading?" The man replied, "How can I, unless someone instructs me?" And he urged Philip to come up into the carriage and sit with him. The passage of scripture he had been reading was this: He was led like a sheep to the slaughter, and as a lamb is silent before the shearers, he did not open his mouth. He was humiliated and received no justice. Who can speak of his descendants? For his life was taken from the earth. The eunuch asked Philip, "Tell me, was the prophet talking about himself or someone else?" So, beginning with the same scripture, Philip told him and the good news about Jesus. As they rode along, they came to some water, and the eunuch said, "Look, there's some water. Why can't I be baptized?" He ordered the carriage to stop, and they went down into the water, and Philip baptized them. When they came about the water, the Spirit of the Lord snatched Philip away. The eunuch never saw him again, but went on his way rejoicing. Meanwhile, Philip found himself further north at the town of Azotus. He preached the good news there in every town along the way until he came to Caesarea.
All right, so what's the question now, Lauren? Or how did that inform your question?
I mean, I guess you just need somebody to baptize you.
But why would you do it in public now? That's a different question. Is it required? I don't think so.
Mhm.
Clearly, it's not required.
Mhm.
You just need to be willing.
Mhm.
You want to. And you have to know what you're committing to.
Does the person baptizing you have to be a certain person?
That's a good question. All the instances that I can think of in the Bible, all the instances that I can think of are people who've been baptized already.
Oh, well, yeah.
I baptized my daughter. I don't know if it took.
I would make the assumption that the person baptizing you would be someone who's already under the same belief system as you are, and it's more so I don't want to say rites of passage, but it's more of a welcoming into the fold baptism. So type of thing. But I don't know. I don't personally believe that the person needs to be ordained or pastor or. I mean, because I wouldn't want to be baptized by somebody who doesn't believe in whatever I'm looking to believe in.
Right. Fact. Mm-hmm. So outside of that, there's no special pedigree and lineup.
Or not at least according to the Book of Acts.
I mean, we've seen the best of them do it, and the worst of them do it.
Dang.
I mean, the people who were baptized in the early days weren't perfect. So we've seen the best of them and we've seen the worst of them. And so
Right.
now
Yeah,
I wonder if there is a moral responsibility with who you baptize.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I said I wonder if there's a moral responsibility with who you baptize or to for instance, and this popped in my head, I might be reaching. When you have people who come to your wedding or officiate your wedding, in so many ways, they're supposed to be witnesses of what you're doing, as well as holding you accountable for what you're doing. And so I wonder if the same would apply for baptism. If you were to baptize someone, you were now holding, making that moral commitment to hold them accountable or walk with them along this path or help them as you see fit.
I'm sorry. You're saying the people that come to my wedding are supposed to hold me accountable?
That was the purpose of having the guests. It wasn't to give
And the
you
witnesses, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That
That's
was
one of the functions of the witnesses, yes.
right. It's not the gift.
Oh, it's not the gift.
No, it's not the gift. It's not the gift. It's not the champagne. It's none of that. It's really to.
So the accountability is the gift that keeps on giving.
It's the accountability.
Yeah. It's to bear witness and through the witness to hold you accountable.
Interesting.
Support.
Should have thought about that before I made my list.
No, I will say
So you're equating baptism, the person who is baptizing, you're equating them to the guests, like the accountability
Right.
for accountability purposes.
But
Or
we
the
don't see that with Philip in the story we just read. Philip never saw that do it again.
That's not what I mean per se. There's people's weddings that I've never been to in my life. I mean, I should have never seen again in my life. But what I mean more so is, had they crossed paths again, or Philip heard of the Enoch acting outside of the belief system by which he, baptized him in, is there that moral responsibility to be like, yo, hello, hi, let's talk, or that piece of it? I don't necessarily have to actively be in it, but I should be willing and open to being called upon if necessary.
Interesting. I didn't think about it from that perspective.
I can receive that. We do see Paul doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's Paul.
All them letters.
All them letters that weren't supposed to be published.
Yes, that weren't supposed to be published. They were supposed to be circulated, though. Circulated. They were supposed to be circulated.
Even the
Part
fact
of me is like, I would have started writing letters just to people in the hopes that Jesus doesn't come back for like 3,000 years and those letters could be published.
oh my gosh, can't wait. Even in that, though, it kind of shows that responsibility. The fact that he taught, y'all really making us look bad out here in these streets.
First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, Sharika.
What?
And here's the thing, Eric, you're right. We don't know how many letters he wrote, right? We only have a handful of them.
Yeah.
What'd you say about me?
I said I have to write like first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, Sharika. Like
record it.
You get a lot of letters.
You might as well record it. Your hands are gonna hurt. We're going digital. That's the next world.
So, Lorraine, are you good?
So, Jared, you're saying, why do we do it in front of people?
Why would you want to do it in front of people?
I mean, why wouldn't you?
Really? That's
my answer. Because, like, if you don't want to do it, it shows a level of shame and then therefore you're not.
Flag on the play, Lorraine. Shade.
What?
Yes, like you don't
Flag.
want nobody to see you get baptized. That
Flag.
shows like you are not. One, you're not really committed. It shows you're not really.
Are people that you elope not? Are they not committed?
Right.
I wasn't
Yeah,
talking
the
about
people who
marriage.
get married in a courthouse
I'm-
is just more
I'm
pay
trying to
attention to
say-
something. It's like,
I'm talking about baptism, not marriage.
Yeah, I'm just saying, but it's like the same thing, right? I mean,
No,
it's not the same thing.
Yeah, it is. It's a
Yeah.
commitment between
There's
God
an
and us.
equivalency. There's an equivalency.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying you
There's so many correlations.
I want to be baptized outside. That doesn't show a level of shame.
Depends on the motivation. I wouldn't say the action itself does that, but the motivation would reveal that.
Right. So one of the reasons I was saying is you're either ashamed or you're not confident in your decision that you're making.
What if going in front of people, you're just trying to like make people think that you are when you're not committed?
Or I don't like y'all enough to be a part of my baptism. Like that part. Like
Like there's so
Second-
many
second-
motivations there.
I mean, yeah, because everything's publicized now. So this day and age, it's not really possible to get baptized unless it's in your house or something.
I know some people who went in a who just took something among themselves and they went in a pool with a pastor and got baptized.
Yeah, but my daughter's going to do that. The second one.
now, we could put an inflatable pool in Kenrick's driveway and baptize.
Mhm.
No,
Yeah.
We could.
you could.
But what I'm saying is I think again we don't know anyone's motivation.
Right.
And sometimes I don't know, I don't think public display matters. I think we got into the idea of public display because we want to lump in the fellowship and the rights into the church and all the rhetoric
Well,
that comes with it. But
I think it's a marketing. I think at the very
at the core of it, it's marketing.
it's a marketing play.
Because
right?
there's no different than Kenrick. If you got baptized in a back room and then you come out and it's like, man, I got baptized. Ain't nobody to say you didn't.
Correct. And it's also convenience. Like, it's a pull of the pastor.
But
Go ahead, Lorraine.
so even if you do get baptized, let me ponder on this a little bit more.
Yeah, I'll just add while you're pondering, Carrick, that for some people it's sharing this with your community, whoever that community is.
Very true.
So I mean, like people have all kinds of mixed motivations for a public display, and then for the potential, more intimate gathering, where it might just be you and the one other person who's baptizing you. And I wouldn't say that the action itself communicates it, but the motivation would reveal those things.
Hey, you really don't know people's motivation though. So
Correct.
you take it at face value. You got baptized, great.
Correct.
Yep.
You got piece of
And
paper,
it's not my job to figure out your motivation.
right?
Correct.
So, yeah, a
Yeah.
pool, a creek, a tub, the baptismal joint, like
I think that's
between
why I
you
wouldn't do
and-
it again.
When-
Kenrick.
in the tub?
You can do
was
it.
that again?
Is that where we do it again, Shri, in the tub? That's what
I'm
you
not baptizing again, period. As what I do in the tub is a different situation.
said? Okay.
I'm never getting back.
Coffee's face.
What you say?
We're still talking about baptism, right?
No, we're talking about baptism. I said that's probably it. Jared poked the bear, and the bear knows the situation. But No, I think that may be one of the reasons why I'll never get baptized again. Because I don't think it makes a difference if people see me or not. If I'm giving up my life, I'm giving up my life. It is what it is. I don't know, but maybe I just.
So if you were to get baptized again, it wouldn't matter. I mean, you would do it and no one would know.
If I were to do it again, which I wouldn't, yeah.
Is there something wrong with doing it twice? What you
I
got?
don't see the purpose of doing it again, period.
I've done it twice. I probably should do it again. Yeah.
Now, is there something
at some point? I think you're at diminishing returns.
Is there something with doing it publicly? If I were going to do it, then I'm gonna pick the people. I'm not gonna pull up at RPC, CPC, Hope, wherever, and just have whoever decide to come to church today and do that. Because for me, again, going back to witnessing and the things that happen now that I've kind of grown in my understanding, that matters to me.
Well, I think that's actually probably the question is there value to doing it in public?
I don't see it.
Of course, there's inspiration for other people. There's encouragement.
Yeah,
you know, there's that. There is the support or the feeling of, hey, I'm joining this big community. You know, that's also there. There are lots of benefits, but I'm not saying that the benefits, whatever they are, means that everyone should do it. That's definitely what I'm not saying.
I think it's also in line with whether or not you get, to your point, married in public, christen your baby in public, repent your sins in the middle of the town hall council, whatever it is.
Wouldn't recommend that, but
yeah, not doing that one.
I've seen it happen. And not happen. But it just
said and not happen.
Yeah, I've seen the community been called and the person be like, nah, I'm not with it. But it just depends on how do you view a crowd.
Yeah. And the point and your intentions. Which
so let me sorry, go ahead.
No, I was done. You're good.
So let me ask you a question. So, and this is kind of getting a little bit off topic, but I was reading the comment. So to validate and hold you accountable, what does hold you accountable look like?
Ye without sin cast the first stone. Pharaoh agrees.
So I would move away from the God piece in order to answer that question. If I know, or if I'm gonna switch it around, if Sharika know that I struggle with cake, right, and we go to a lunch or a dinner, and she understands that I'm on a fitness journey, right, and she see me go and cut the biggest, fattest slice of cake because they're serving it for dessert, what should Sharika do?
Take half of it.
Whatever action she does to remind me of my commitment
of your commitment
is holding me accountable. Whether she takes half of the cake and say, you know, you're entitled to a cheat day, but don't eat all of that because you'll undo all the gains you get yesterday. I'll take half of that. That's one way. Even her coming and saying, you sure that's a good idea? Yeah, I'll work it off tomorrow. Okay. She planted the seed that made me reflect or stop to remind me of my commitment. Like, to me, that's where what holding accountable involves, but the how varies depending on relationship and the nature of the thing itself.
I think that's where I was going when I said the ye without sin. I think a lot of people use hold accountable as a means to reprimand, and that's two different things. I really like how you're just like, when you're trying to hold somebody accountable, it's like, is that really what you want to do? Or, for example, when I'm holding someone accountable, it'd be like, you know, Jared, you told me to remind you that you were on a fitness journey the next time I saw you with cake. That's all I'm here for. Carry on. And if you want to eat the cake, that's on you. But for me to grab the cake and be like, you know, Jared, I don't think you should do that, you know, and you're fat or something like that's not keeping someone accountable. That's reprimanding them. Hence my comment of.
But it can be if I say, Sharika, if you ever see me with a cake again, I give you permission to grab it.
It depends. Because a lot of people say stuff like that, And I would still start with, remember that time that you told me that if I saw you with a cake again, I should do
Correct. Because environment, everything
Right.
makes a difference. Yeah.
Oh, it's like, again, back to that reprimanding thing.
And the nature of the relationship, because
Correct.
we may have a relationship where you could come and do that and it won't be a scene, right? I think the relationship is one of the first dictators of what the how looks like.
This is why I tell people all the time, you gotta be aware of who you ask to hold you accountable, or who you allow to witness certain things that you're doing.
Correct.
I mean, let's just be real. Like, you gotta really,
Yep.
And it also depends on I guess that's a factor of the relationship. What's the structure of the community or the environment? Because that also plays a part in the accountability. All right. What accountability looks like between two people is also different from what accountability looks like when we have a hierarchy or structure for how we've organized our community. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yeah. All right, Courtney. I think this was Lorraine's question, and I think she may have had to step away, so we'll transition back to you. And if she wants to pick it up when she comes back, we can.
All right, cool. All right. I think I was, we're just reading Samuel last couple of weeks. I think also, I've been watching some videos from a group of folks on YouTube called Little Light Studios. They, I guess they pose this question, and since it tied in with the reading and even what you guys kind of just mentioned just now with accountability, I just figured I'd pose the thought on everyone, so we kind of have a discussion about it. But ultimately, it's to me seeing a trend from some of the readings that we've done, especially in the Bible study we do on Saturday afternoons. We start from the Old Testament. I've been seeing that there's been a pattern almost, but there's this, an indulgence of appetite. It seemed like that was a cause for, I want to say, uh, you know, kind of like a degradation of morality, and so the question I have is like, do I obey my senses, or do I obey what God says? Um, I have a few verses about it in the Bible, but I was just wondering if we could kind of go into it some more. I think that there's this an issue with gluttony that we have in, I could say, our country. I don't know if we want to say the whole world, but I think it kind of gets overlooked. Um, you know, I know that there's been a few books and so forth talking about uh, what intemperance can do, and how much does our temptation, the Satan, use that kind of temptation to have us indulge in our appetite, causing us to, I guess, stumble overall. Is there some type of correlation?
That's a good question, Courtney.
Yeah.
But I want to pause to find out how you're defining gluttony, or how are you using that word? Are you talking about like literal food gluttony, or just
like sensual, like anything like carnal?
Got it.
Because there's like, we would say like, what caused Sodom and Gomorrah to fall? Like, what was it? Like,
was their pride and their callous nature?
Right. But yeah, so we see in certain scriptures, maybe like First Peter 1. I think we can look at that, like I think 15 through 16, and also 18 through 19. We talk about the body being a temple, And I guess if we're trying to have this relationship with God, where our bodies is a temple for the Spirit of God to dwell in us, how important is it for us to be mindful of how we treat the temple?
So, can my body be a temple, and I choose to eat right, be balanced, be temperate in my diet, and still be a glutton?
Oh yeah, you can, because it's like it's essentially it's all your senses, probably not just what you put into your mouth. It could be what you view. What I mean, what you listen to, uh, etc.
So, and I'm pushing because I'd like to. Sometimes we get to the right destination, but our journey there's if we follow it, it won't actually get us there.
Yeah.
So I'm just pushing a little bit to say, well, is as useful as it is, and I'm acknowledging that it's very useful to be reminded of the importance of our bodies and and the significance of it and the value of treating it well. Would that really be and I'm saying this as a technical troubleshooter, would that necessarily be a fix to the challenge of gluttony?
Mm.
I'm sorry. Ask that again, Jared.
Is a reminder that my body is a temple enough to guard against gluttony, or is there something else that can be more effective?
Care.
No, not for me. What?
He said, "What could be more effective?" I said, "Care." Like you'd actually have to care. Like you could tell me.
What?
No, like for me at least, I would have to want to, one, believe that my body is a temple, and two, understand the sacred nature of a temple, and three, believe that this sacred nature is actually attainable. And those things.
Yeah, I work under pressure. I actually, you're at the come, like, for me to think my body's, I mean, I know my body's a temple,
Right.
but I need a doctor's note.
But that's what I'm saying. You would have to care. Like, I feel like in order for you to, I gotta tell people, just because you're vegan doesn't mean you're healthy. Doesn't mean you're being a temple.
That's
like,
correct.
Just because you're skinny doesn't mean you're healthy. Just because whatever, none of that happens. And so, societal beliefs of what I look like can dictate if I'm a temple or not. But that doesn't. But how are you defining temple? Some people have different definitions of temples. And
so for instance, my body's a temple. I've been eating better. I've been eating really well, working out, doing all the stuff, right? And I went to get a malaria pill prescription the other day, and they were like, "We want to take your vitals," and my blood pressure was like 184 over like 100.
Wow,
crazy! And I was like, "This doesn't make any sense." Like, Jules, like, she was ready to do open heart surgery herself right there. Like, she was like, "I'm gonna unclog valves. I'm gonna do whatever I need to do. Like, I'll put the stent in. I got some paper clips. I got," like, she was gonna do whatever. And I was like, "Everybody back, like, relax." But when I got it, I was like, "Oh, I'm immediately juicing. I'm never eating any processed food ever again in life." I was it. And then I was like, hold on. Let's actually think about why you're. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go home and drink some beet juice. I'm going to drink water because I think I'm dehydrated. And like by that evening, it was 120 over 80. Like, just drink water, dude. Like, just drink some more water. Right? But my body's a temple didn't get, like, it was a ridiculously high blood pressure count that was going to be like, your body's a temple, dog. Like, take care of yourself.
I don't even know if bodies and
So
temple
for
cords
me,
were
it's,
fine at that point. It was simply your blood pressure's high, bro. Get that joint down. Like
I think
like
Sharika,
you gonna die and leave this trick to somebody else? Like that was my motivation.
yeah, but it's like Sharika said, it's essentially it's, in whatever form it comes, getting to the point where you care. I mean, we're talking about food, but
Correct.
you know, they've been showing how doing this on your Instagram, Facebook, whatever feed is a dopamine hit. And there are people where their entire life is falling apart because there's gluttony for this, or there's gluttony for
Correct.
clout, or whatever else, right? And until and unless something triggers them to care, it's like, I know, but, and you'll always have an excuse.
And it probably should be, right? My body's a temple, you know. From and to Courtney's point, and I think where Jared was also going is like, you know, and it's not just food, it's all the senses, right? That you have to be. I don't know how smell is outside of Coke, but I don't know how smell.
Please,
But
Amen, please remember, 40% of your taste buds are in your nose, right? So everything you smell, you taste. I'm just
I don't know what smell. I don't know what over.
You don't know what it's.
Can you overindulge in smell? I don't. Whatever. Anyway, but I think it affects all the senses, and so it's not just food. It's what you see, it's what you hear, and I guess ideally, you know, all of that, because Philippians tells us, right? You know, whatsoever things are pure, whether things are, you know, lovely, all that kind of stuff, right? So we should be aware of it. I just, you know, I know I'm not always aware of that until.
I would push a little bit deeper and say, and agree with Sharika 100% that it is care, but I would ask care about what, you know, because if we start dealing in the care of, you know, my body, that deals with one aspect of me, or care of, you know, that I consider good thoughts, that's still only one aspect of me. But is there a more holistic care that allows me to hit everything all at one time? Or do I now have to care
But I
about?
think it is your body, because, you know, just like anything else, I think, you know, the healthier you are, the clearer your mind is. The clearer your mind is, the better you can think and move about and interact in a healthy manner, right? If you're not as irritable, you know, that helps to manage your relationships and the way you deal with other people. So I think it's all of those things can be affected, but, you know, so I do think it's, you know, it's not necessarily. Go ahead.
She raising her hand. Go ahead.
I told you, and this is to the point of care, because I believe that the care is going to be selfish and self-motivated. And I'm getting there.
Yeah.
If I told you that you are the healthiest person on the face of the earth, but you got to be 600 pounds, you have to stay there. But biologically, you're healthy. You're just big. How do we feel?
Heavy.
I must came in this on the wrong end. What were we talking about?
Are you alive?
No.
That's how I feel heavy.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm saying is, in most cases, it is a selfish drive to have you care about everything. If the doctor looks at you and says you are healthy, you could be 600. No, walking around 600 pounds. That ain't it. I need to lose weight. It doesn't matter if I'm healthy or not. I need to look better. I need to present better. I need to do da for no other reason but self-gain. And that's okay. But in most cases, we are either motivated by self or how someone else made you feel about self.
Yeah, and that's why I kept trying to get to care about what, because we could care about a whole lot of things, and they could move us into a direction that the outcome seems beneficial, but it's really driven by not so righteous motivations.
But isn't that why things fall apart, though?
How you mean?
Well, I saw this quote which I really fancied. It said, I'm paraphrasing here. I realized the way I get to be my best self is by trying to be more like Jesus. So if your motivation, just an example, is to be more like Jesus, it's going to encompass everything. If your motivation is to be, the next Vin Diesel, then you might only be focused on your physical attributes. Or if your motivation is, you have to marry a Kardashian, then you're only going to be focused on how much money you make, and if you're a basketballer or something. But if you're focused on, again, being like Jesus, that's all in. And again, that's just one example. It's all encompassing. It's not that you can, well, I'll do this, but then on this side, I will still, you know what I mean? And I think that's why things fall apart, because we're so heavily focused or influenced on some selfish motive that if that self-serving thing isn't there, or it doesn't give us the dopamine hit we're looking for, then it's like, why am I even doing this? So if being all chiseled is to get a particular person's attention, or just attention full stop, and a million likes, and you're not getting the likes, then you're like, yeah, I don't need to do this.
Yeah.
What does be like Jesus look like?
I would.
Well, we can look at that. How about just read
No.
something real quick?
I'm not talking about from a personality perspective, which we all know. It goes back to the physical part that I'm telling you, like that I was talking about. Like what we know Jesus to look like is a very handsome, trampling man, right?
The Bible actually paints him very differently, but yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Society has given us this handsome, trampling man, whether he's white, Arabic, whatever you want him to be tomorrow. Jesus could have been fat. Jesus could have been slow. Jesus could have been handicapped. He could have been whatever. I think what Jesus would prefer is that we didn't pay attention so much to how we appear to each other physically. But that's just not where we are right now. As a people, that's just not where we are.
So I want to read real quick. First Peter chapter 1, verses 13 through 16. And I think we probably read this on here before. But so prepare your minds for action and exercise self-control. Put all your hope in the gracious salvation that will come to you when Jesus Christ is revealed to the world. So you must live as God's obedient children. Don't slip back into your old ways of living to satisfy your own desires. You didn't know any better then, but now you must be holy in everything you do, just as God who chose you is holy. For the scriptures say, you must be holy because I am holy. So again, I guess the issue is again self-control. Like, is exercising self-control? It seems that there's a building of mental faculty, and also your moral, I want to say, strength. And if you don't practice self-control, it seems as though that you won't have there's something that happens to you mentally and physically as well. You know what I mean? So again, like self-control, seems to be tied to holiness, according to what Peter's writing. And I'm trying to figure out, again, is it a thing that should be practiced in throughout our life in various facets of it?
It's a good question, Courtney. I would ask, why would you want to be self-controlled?
I can use my personal.
I'm not saying why you should.
Yeah,
that's a different question.
Mm-hmm.
Why should you want? Why would you want to be self-controlled? Why go through that process? Why indulge that philosophy? This was what I was trying to kind of push into the deeper thing about care, because Sharika's on the nail on the head with care, but care about what? Care about what will answer the question, why be self-controlled? And if, for example, we sit just in the space of, diet and health and lifestyle, then we can be, let me put it this way, there are a whole rack of people who are self-control, who have self-control in some areas of their life because they care about whatever self-control will help them to get. And so to me, self-control is a big deal, it's important, but it's important in the context of something else though. It's being pulled by another string. And I'm trying to figure out what that string is that matters. I would argue, rather than delay it, I would argue that the care is in, which is, I would argue that this is where the lordship of Jesus matters. If he is my Lord, then I care about what he wants. That then gives self-control a place. Because I know he wants me to X, Y, and Z, self-control facilitates that. But my care is in what he wants. And so now my motivations are not selfishly driven. They're not driven by what I want, which is the flesh. They're driven by what he wants. And the spirit communicates that. So what I care about is him and his desires. When I care about that, that's when I start to become like him, as Jerry is pointing out. Because now I'm doing the things that are important to him, and that transforms me into being like him. So, that's kind of where I would see all of that kind of framing together and sitting in the same space. But if I don't care about him, then everything else I do after that is what I want or what I think is best and why I think, and then it becomes segmented and fragmented. And it doesn't necessarily carry over from one aspect of my life to the other. So I might not be a glutton for food, but I'm a glutton for reality TV, or I'm a glutton for basketball and I don't, give enough time to my family. It just, that's to me where you get out of whack, when it becomes about me. And as a cake eater, I appreciate that fully. I appreciate that fully. Yeah. All right, we missed you. We don't know if you were good with the baptism. We transitioned while you weren't here.
Oh no, yeah, I was good. Had to step away for a moment.
Oh, Clifford, I've been putting in the Batman's comments. He said to be more like Jesus, you'd have to attune to godly direction in all areas and aspects of my life because I care about him. If I don't care about him, then I don't attune myself in all areas. So yeah, it is care about him.
Who was Batman?
I think it is the guy who's supposed to be here with us, but I don't want to put him on blast if that is the case. But,
Okay.
So I'm gonna speculate that it might be him, but
Okay.
I don't know for sure. Yeah, I'm gonna leave that there. I did have a question that came from another time we were reading in the from Mark chapter 5, verse 39 to 40.
Give the text again.
Mark 5:14.
Mark 5, 39 to 40.
39.
Yeah. I mean, we could read the whole story, but I'm gonna read from 35. 35. I'm gonna read. That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat.
You said Mark 5?
Sorry, I'm reading the wrong thing. Yes, Mark 5. I'm writing the wrong thing. 39.
Oh, I was going to say, what version is that?
Yeah, I was reading 4. I was looking at 4:39 to 40. But ironically, 39 to 40 says almost the same thing in a different way. So that's why I was like, oh, I'm in the right place. But it was Mark 4 I was reading, but I should be reading Mark 5. Yeah, we can read from 21.
Now you want to read it now? You can do it.
So I'm gonna do both.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
back to 4 and then go back to 5. I'm gonna do both, 4 and 5. So Mark 4, 35 to 40. That day when evening came, he said to the disciples, let's go to the other side. Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, Teacher, don't you care if we drown? He got up, rebuked the winds of the waves. Quiet, be still. The wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? They were terrified and they asked each other, who is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him. I'm going to put up my question, but I'm going to also read the other text. So it's Matthew chapter 5. We can read from verse 35. So what was happening before is that Jairus came to Jesus to ask him to heal his daughter. He was heading there. He got touched up by the woman with the issue of blood. And now he's at Jairus's house. Or he's on his... Well, he didn't get to Jairus's house. He hasn't gotten to Jairus's house yet. But some people come and meet him from Jairus's house while he's been on his way. While Jesus was still speaking, some people came over from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. Your daughter is dead, they said. Why bother the teacher anymore? Overhearing what they had said, Jesus told him, don't be afraid, just believe. He did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw the commotion while people were wailing. Crying and wailing loudly. He went in and said to them, why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead, but asleep. But they laughed at him. So those are my verses, 39 and 40. After he put them all out, he took the child's father and mother and disciples who were with him, and he went into where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, Talitha kum, which means, little girl, I say to you, get up. Immediately the little girl stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old. At this, they were completely astonished. He gave strict orders not to let anyone know about this and told them to give something to eat. So my question is, from both of those 39 and 40 verses, how would your approach to life change if you shared Jesus' perspective on the things in this life? And I ask because Jesus is in a storm and he thinks about going to sleep. So his perspective on the storm is very different from his disciples. Everybody in this house is bawling, crying, and wailing, but Jesus' perspective on life and death is very different. And so he approaches it a whole lot differently. If we shared his perspective on things, or if you shared perspective on things, how would you approach life differently?
Are you talking about like life and death? Or just anything in life?
In one I started with the death story, but I was glad that I read the storm story because there was no death in that story. It was just...
Well, they thought they were going to die.
Well, I think there'll be, like, for me, I think there'll probably be a little less plotting things out. I mean, my mind's always working. I'm always trying to figure something out, right? Mm-hmm. Do this. If I do this, I can get this. If I do this, this will happen. And I fight with myself because I question whether or not in some respects I lack faith or trust because I feel like I can do it. And so so Jesus' perspective when he's in the boat is that, you know, I have a father who created all of this and he's got it. So whether I'm sleeping or I'm awake, actively worrying about it, it's still out of my control. There's nothing I can do about it.
Clearly, there was something he could do about it. He got up and said, "Stop."
Well, yes, but from my perspective, right? And so for me, I think it's that. I think if I had Jesus' perspective, there'll probably be a little less, a lot less stress, and trying to manipulate and manage and do things, and probably a little less, and probably a little bit more patience.
So similar to Kenrick. So it's interesting that question because that's been lately I'm trying this. So I live in the future, meaning I'm always thinking about what could happen. So my decisions today are about what could happen tomorrow, right? The Lord's working on me. So, like recently, I'm gonna give a mini testimony. So my computer, which has never had any issues, I needed it for an important task that was coming up, and my daughter and I were somewhere, and she spilt water down into my computer.
Oh.
And I will say it had to be the Lord. Because I simply said to her, I said, okay, I was like, I need you to go to your room for a moment and I'll call you back out.
You said it like that?
Yeah, just like that. I said, I just need you to go to your room for a moment. She's like, but what? I was like, I just trust me. Just go in your room for a moment and I'll call you back out. And so, she's feeling sad because she's like, oh my gosh. So I'm there trying to pat my computer, and then the water's going down in the computer, and I'm trying to blow the computer, like trying to blow the water out. And then the thing just shut down. And I was like, okay, all right, my computer's not working. I was like, well, Lord, this task got to get done. So you're going to have to figure it out. You're going to have to work it out. And so I called, but of course, I'm still, what can you do, Lorraine? What can you do right now in the meantime? So I called like a repair shop, and the guy was like, whatever you do, take your battery off. I was like, it's a solid state thing. Like, I cannot it's not like a piece that I could just pop off the back. Like, I might have to unscrew some things. And so I was like, okay. So I was like, okay, well, thank you, sir. God, I was like, can't take that off. And then he said, then I was like, oh, I got a warranty on the computer. I was like, great, warranty. Call the warranty plate. And they were like, well, it doesn't cover accidental damage. We're not going to panic. Right? So I was like, okay, Lord, you're still going to figure it out. So I tilted the computer down. Now, mind you, I still have a little like anxiety in me, but I was like, but you're going to figure it out because I can't figure it out. So you got to figure it out. So I tilted my computer like down, like as much as I could and left it like this. And I was like, well, this thing is coming up that I need my computer for. So Lord, and then my coworker was like, oh, I have a laptop at my house that you could use until you fix your computer. And I was like, okay, God, all right. So the computer comes and I'm trying to load it and try to use it, make sure I could access all the stuff I needed to access. And then I was trying to download some things. This was like 3 days later now. I was trying to download the different softwares or whatever. And I literally sat there and did one of those, Lord, if you will just, I will kind of prayers. I was like, Lord, if you will just make my computer work. I was like, I know it shut down and everything, and I know I plugged it in and it wasn't turning on and no power was going into the computer. But if you would just wake it up. And so I went in the room and I plugged the cord in, and the light came on the computer. I was like, ooh! And then I was like, okay, don't get too excited. Don't get too excited. So then I pushed the power button, and then the thing came. I was like, whoa! And I was like, okay, but I'm not gonna be too excited. I was like, now let's transfer all files ASAP. We don't know how long this is gonna stay. So I transferred all the files, and then my daughter was like, "Mom, it's on." And then she was like, "We should celebrate." And I was like, "No, let's just relax. let's not get too excited." But I say all that to say, and it's been working, like it's the same computer I'm using now. But I say all that to say, like, I was intentional about not panicking and not worrying about. I'm like, Lord, I'm not looking because I can't figure it out. You're gonna have to work that out. Like you're gonna have to. Now I'm not like that with all areas, but this is just an example of me trying it, and I literally felt at peace because I was like, I can't fix. Like I don't have the money to buy another computer. I don't. So you're gonna have to work it out somehow, some way. You're gonna have to work it out. Yeah.
That makes me think of sometimes when the kids have a challenge and they get to a certain point, they're like, "Daddy," and they don't worry about it because Daddy will come and take care of it. Like, so that's what that made me think about.
There's nothing I could have. There's apps. I don't have no computer, nothing, knowledge of nothing to fix nothing. So I was like,
I feel like I thought of this question completely differently, and it's speaking to the level of sin I'm still involved in. Because
So it's not about the sin, but what you mean.
no, hey, funny thing enough, it wasn't even anything particular. But when you said the perspective of Jesus, I feel like I would never be a Christian if I had the perspective of Jesus.
Tell me more. That's interesting.
Jesus is like, I'm a God. Like, why y'all making so much ruckus? Like, do you see who I am? Like, it doesn't matter. I can fix it. Like, the idea of having Jesus's perspective is that nothing matters. And eventually, if I say something, it'll get fixed. Like, I didn't see it as, I don't know. I guess you guys, I feel like you guys took it like, oh, if I'm in Jesus' perspective. And I took it as Jesus, like, if I was in his shoes with his perspective, that's how I took it. And I'm like, if I thought that this world was trash, and I could fix everything as I needed to, this is a different beast that you're dealing with. And not in a good way, because literally, what would I fear? Nothing. I fear nothing. Jared, you would tell me, man, like, God forbid, you like, man, I lost my job. Why are you sweating it, yo? Just give me like 5 minutes. Bam, money. Like,
if you're Jesus, it will still take you 5 minutes.
Like, I'm just,
Yeah, because she'd be busy. It's prioritizing, right? She'd be busy dealing with other things.
Oh my gosh! What kind of Jesus are you?
Wait your time. Like Jesus let Lazarus and them wait for 3 days. Yo. I got stuff to do. Like, hold on. I'm getting to it. You already paid May's mortgage. I'm coming. Like, that's how so I think it's dangerous for me to have the perspective of Christ. Because at that point, I have no fear. I'm invincible.
I want to add this text on to what you said, Sharika. John 14:12.
All right, let's go.
I want to throw some gas on that fire a little bit. John 14:12.
I'm straight with that. That's fine.
You didn't read it for everybody else.
Oh, my bad. Truly, I say to you, whoever believes in me will also do the works that I do, and greater works than these will he do, because I am going to the Father. Bet. Cool.
So in terms of what you were saying, if I had the power to fix things like Jesus did, he's saying, well, you do. So listen, how does that now change or impact what you're saying? Because he's saying, well, you do, if you believe in me. So,
I thought I was aiming to tap into my inner Esther and Delilah, but clearly there's higher levels to this. And so it makes me even worse if I be quite frank. Like, because also and we've argued this before, and so I'm not looking to argue it, but this is my mindset. Christ's perspective is that Earth is a finite thing in an infinite world.
Mhm.
Not that I don't care about it, but it's gonna come and go because I've seen before, I've seen after, whatever. Like y'all really worrying about this thing because y'all don't know what came before. And I hope that you make it after with me, but whatever. When you have that perspective of infinite knowledge, certain things just I have my level of endurance and motivation is very different.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't care at that point. You want to tell me I can do bigger things? Awesome sauce. You want to tell me you're gonna crucify me? Okay. Like not to say that I like it, I'm gonna feel it, but I know there's something after that. And,
So
and
are you saying this to bolster your argument that you don't have to have Jesus' perspective?
I'm saying if I have Jesus's perspective, there's a different type of lifestyle, and I understand what he's saying. And that's why I said it's bringing out the true nature of the life of sin that goes on in my head. In that, this really doesn't matter, Jared. Doesn't matter. I can make things happen. I can make things not happen. It's fine because Jesus' perspective is not just human. And so, if you want me to look at it from a human and forget everything else that he has, it's a whole different argument. But if I'm looking at Jesus' perspective, like y'all really stressing over what, a couple million years?
So,
There's more to it.
but why wouldn't that be the perspective you should have?
Correct. That's what I was about to ask about. That's what he said to the disciples, right?
This is why I'm saying if I truly had this perspective,
if you truly did, okay, got it.
Oh, okay.
My lifestyle would be slightly different.
Yeah, so you are answering the question. Okay, got it.
My problem.
Understand.
Got it. So
I'm with you.
The Batman says, but we can and do have Jesus' perspective on life. He says we can. Oh, it moved. But while here on earth, while he was here, he wasn't God. He had to completely rely on his Father.
Flag on the play. Flag right there. Whoever Batman is, I'm Joker. Welcome to the club. Jesus was definitely God when he was on earth.
Yeah,
but we're not going to do that at 9:52 p.m. Definitely flag on the play.
Here we go. I thought we were going to be able to make it. I was waiting on this one.
All the way.
Yep.
But it wasn't me. It wasn't
8
me.
minutes.
It wasn't me.
8 minutes.
It was the Batman. Gotcha.
It was the Batman. It was the Gotham City civilian. It wasn't me.
Man.
Yeah.
Jared, I'll say one thing though.
Good luck, Batman.
Hold on to that thought, Jared. Let me just finish these last two points. He had to completely rely on God, his Father. On earth, Jesus didn't have that knowledge, only believed that he did and could have it.
Flag.
And then he says, okay, now I get you. All right.
No, guys, no, seriously, Jesus knew everything before and after, in the middle when he was on earth. Please understand that. Like, I want us to walk. That's my takeaway, Jared. Jesus knew everything.
I like that segue. It's my takeaway.
As we wrap this up.
Yeah.
We're not doing that. Like go back. Hollywood Squares. It's your turn, Lorraine.
We have to talk about this after.
Go ahead, Jerry. You had a point in the queue.
I want to
if I had Jesus' perspective, I think I'd be certainly be a lot more consistent, right? Because if I'm viewing things the way he does it, the reason you lose motivation or focus and whatnot sometimes is because you get into worry mode, any number of things. Whereas if you maintain his perspective, it's easier to be, I guess, consistent. That's actually my takeaway.
How much you, Courtney?
You just got your takeaway after?
You still having conversation?
They doing takeaways already?
All right, go. I think
Man. Now, I think that a lot of what Jesus was doing in his life here on earth was for the people around him. Like I agree with Sharika in that sense that yeah, he was God and he knew all, but his focus was on teaching those around him about the nature of God. I think that in the situation on the boat, there was, if you look at the verse before, Jesus he tells them, let's go over, right? Like we're going over this the whatever ocean, the sea, wherever they're at. So to me, and one thing is that it's like they didn't have faith in what he said. I think that was one aspect. So I think Jesus is trying to get them to a point where they believe what he says, right? And then the second part, when they're talking about like, oh, hey, you, don't you care? Like we're basically capsizing, or we're about to. And so now he's dispelling that notion that he doesn't care. So those are like things that I see that he's doing to reassure, like, you can trust in what I say, and you can trust that I care about you all.
Mhm.
So I think that's what he's more concerned about. Like, forget everything that's happening around us. I need you guys to know this right here. You can have faith in what I say. You can have faith that I care.
I receive it. I receive it. Before I take Cliff, I'd say mine, because Courtney, you helped help me refine my thoughts. If I had his perspective, I think my priorities in life would be a little bit different. I would prioritize things differently and give different things more time and energy. Like I remember when I read The Purpose-Driven Life, one of the arguments that Rick Warren makes is, um, when you understand purpose or whatever purpose is, you then prioritize your life around that purpose, and things just fall by the side that aren't connected to that purpose. And I think I see that with Jesus, like because he understands what he's here to do, and who he is and what he's about, the storm doesn't affect him the same way it affects the disciples. The death he doesn't react to it the same kind of way because his priorities are different. When the people come and say to him as a Jewish person, don't you care about what the Romans did to those people? He's like, yeah, that's a big deal, but if you don't repent, you will die. Because his orientation is different, and the things that we elevate as important don't have the same kind of importance. And so that's kind of what struck me as I was reading it and listening to the way he attacked the storm. Right? It's just, as Sharika said, it's just a storm. Relax. I mean, the fact that I sleeping means you could relax because it's just a storm. Because if I wanted to, I could get up and stop it, right? So just let it be what it is, and you know, and relax. That's a whole different mind shift and paradigm to be operating under as you navigate the things. It's like I think about it. Jesus didn't have a retirement plan on a 401k, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that, but I'm saying he didn't even have a plan to be buried because he knew somebody else was taking care of that, right? No, I'm not saying that to say that we should not be responsible with the things we've been entrusted in this life. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that when you have a perspective like his, it forces you to prioritize things differently. I think that's that changed my understanding of I think in Matthew 6:33, seek ye first the kingdom, and then all these things would be added onto you. It's not that, you know, not that those things aren't important, but this helps to guide that. This helps to help you focus on how you navigate that, which of those things you pursue, which of those things you don't, how much, how little, and how you spend your time and your energy. And um, I don't have that. I don't have that perspective yet because the things of this earth, the water and the waves are very real, and I can feel it and I can see it. And it's challenging to orient to another way of viewing it because I'm so because I exist in this realm, right? But I'm still working. But those were my thoughts around it. Cliff, I see you. I see you. I saw you.
No, when you started off, I was just saying, okay, you saying everything I'm about to say, so it's really no need for me to say anything, except for minus the purpose-driven life part, because I didn't read the purpose-driven life. I only read an excerpt from it, and I didn't have that perspective from the purpose-driven life part. But you just about said everything I was going to say. I mean, if you Jesus' perspective was, this little speck of finite that you're worried about is such a small pebble in the scope of infinite. This little dimension that you're living in is just a small pebble in the scope of the infinite dimension that you're missing out on. So, I mean, that's all I really had to add to that. You summed it up for me. Very good. Thank you.
How do we switch, or can we switch? I mean, I guess we could, but how do we reorient, recalibrate? Sharika.
Are we saying that Jesus is to have Jesus' perspective means I must be good?
I didn't say all of that. I was just saying.
What?
I didn't. I don't know what.
What do you mean?
I wasn't landing there.
Okay.
I guess you could land there. I didn't land there.
What do you mean by good? I must be good.
Jesus' in my opinion, the perspective that Jesus had neither was Christian or non-Christian. It's either good or bad. It's a perspective, and you can have that perspective and use it for good, and you can have that perspective and use it for bad. It really just depends on what you. The perspective is that there's more to this than, in my opinion, there's more to it. Chill out. This is passing.
Mm-hmm.
It's good, it's bad, whatever. I can take that and be positive or negative about it.
So Jesus wasn't neutral in his perspective on that. His perspective was, it's just passing. So be faithful to God because it's just passing. Like he did have that slant to it, and you see it in the way he navigated. Like, I don't really want to do this, but that's what you want, so I'm gonna do it, right? Because of the grand scheme of things. Like you see that in his navigation.
But that was his purpose. That
and
was
then he says, I don't do what I want. I do what my Father wants, and that's where I am.
Right.
So he kind of lands in the same place of the writer of Ecclesiastes.
And I'll save this for later. But one thing that came to mind was just, are we saying perspective and purpose?
Say it for later. Say it.
No, I'm not saying perspective and purpose is the same thing. I think your perspective helps you detect purpose. And I'm not talking about this whole, everybody has a unique specific purpose. I was using, when I reference purpose, I was only being illustrative of when you understand what you are going to do, whatever that thing is, and you make that your priority, then you prioritize all the other things around whatever that thing is. So I wasn't making a statement about us having this grand purpose for life. I was really only using that illustratively to talk about how when you are clear about one thing, it orients everything else, whatever that thing is. So, for example, Kobe Bryant was, passionate about basketball, and he oriented his whole life around that, and it affected everything, and how he prioritized things, and you listen to him talk about it, was around those things. So that's the context in which I was using purpose.
Gotcha.
I thought when you said perspective, like another thing I thought of was his perspective was, I'm about my Father's business, like whatever that is, whenever that is, at whatever moment that is. Everything else has to go around that thing at that moment. Like, Lord, you say go, oh, okay, well then everything else gotta. It's like you gotta be always flexible and willing to adjust at a whatever moment, whatever time, whatever shift. Just be attuned and shift when you're told to shift, and everything else gotta. Which that doesn't sound easy to me. For my personality, but I mean that's.
So, Lauren, before I left Trinidad, I had an experience one time when I was coming into this relationship with God piece, where I started to have that mindset, and he tested me. I was late to a partner's wedding. Jerry, I was going to Ozzy's wedding. And I was walking. I don't remember where I was walking, but wherever I was walking, because I didn't have car at that time, Maxi, so you had to take public transportation to go places and then walk to the next thing. And while I was on my way, some dude on the street stopped and asked me to help him get something to eat. And in my mind, I'm like, I'll be late to this wedding. But then in that whole be about your father's business thing, I stopped to engage him. And like he was serious about eating. So I delayed from the thing and went to the store, made sure he was settled, and then went across. And it was, the experience stuck with me, not because I really don't know what happened with him, but it made me ask myself, am I willing to be that flexible on a consistent basis? I did it this one time, but can I really live like that?
Yeah.
What if you were on your way to work and you had an important meeting? Then what? And I trust him enough to allow him to move me like that.
Or you couldn't be late one more time to work.
And so yeah, that's what you
That was really personal.
But if you were about your father's business, then you would then know that he would also take care of your one more time late.
Look, okay, that's what I said. The Lord's working on it because I don't think I'm that flexible. I would like to be. I have moments.
You'd have to have faith that you
or he'll take care of you. Like, you don't need that job. I got you.
Well, God could have the person that's clocking you not be there that day.
That one day.
They never recognize.
He can have you fired that day and be like, "You really don't trust me."
Either way, you would be about your father's business, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because ultimately, you would.
It's just not always that testimony though.
Yeah, it's not always that testimony.
Yeah, nobody gets up and tells a testimony where I did my father's business and I lost my job. And that's the end of the story.
I'm in that moment. I'm not even in the post-job loss moment. I'm here in this moment. I love
Yesterday, I lost my job.
I lost my job. Anybody got some help?
And God's gonna work it out.
Yeah. Y'all talked about that last time.
Yeah.
They tell you about the story afterward. Like,
so I think
exactly
our conversation and he said Jesus wasn't considered handsome, to something we had talked about earlier. I think he was responding to you, but this just came in a few minutes ago. And Batman is still on saying your purpose can also give clarity to your perspective as well. All right, cool. Just wanted to bring those in.
Also, just for clarity, I cleared up what I meant when Jesus was considered handsome. I talked about society's piece.
When he gets caught up, he'll realize, he'll hear that. He'll hear that in the conversation. He may have typed in, preemptively. So yeah.
If you do join in on YouTube, if you join in, it joins in then. So he could be a few minutes behind.
Yeah. But we will get the comments in real time.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So yeah, that was my question there. Sharika, what do you say we carrying over? What are we carrying over?
Those flags on the field.
Oh,
they all over the place.
It was your takeaway.
To my count, that's number 3 right there.
Lorraine wanted to take over the argument of what Jesus was and wasn't. I was simply asking about perspective and purpose, which we can take somewhere else.
Did you get clarity on that?
From what you were saying, yes.
Okay, good. All right.
We can talk about it after.
So, are we going around the takeaways, or do I start eliminating the people who've already preemptively thrown the takeaways?
I don't even know. Are people doing the takeaways already?
I said what I said.
Yeah.
Here's what I'll do. Say it again. All right, we start with you, Lorraine, and come back around.
I guess that flexibility thing just stuck. Like, am I really that flexible? I mean, I know I'm not, but can I be? Because even when we were just reading the boat situation, he said to them, "Do you still have no faith?" That means that almost gives the impression that they didn't actually ever gain it. That's how it sounded to me when he said it. Like, that means you consistently had no faith. Are you still at the no faith state? Like they've been with him a minute, and the whole time he's like, they don't have no faith. Like all you had to have is what do you say, the size of a mustard seed, and they didn't even have that this whole time. Still no faith. Like maybe I don't have any faith. Oh God, maybe I don't have any faith because I don't know. I just hope and pray that I will be flexible enough to move and do when God tells me to move and do.
Word. Jerry?
Yeah,
It's like I already did it.
if I have the perspective of Christ, it'll definitely do wonders for my consistency.
Eric?
So the perspective of Christ kind of hit a spot because I've been struggling with that for the past probably 2 or 3 months. Just I'm very much a doer, as I was saying earlier, and on several occasions, God has been telling me like, stop doing, like, let me, like, I need you to be patient. I need you to trust me. Just stop trying to figure everything out. You can't do. And so it came up again tonight when you asked your question, and it's just another. So at some point, I should listen. So trusting who God is, and having the perspective of Jesus, and realizing that, you know, the things that I'm doing or things that people do or things that you will be doing it's a lot bigger than what y'all laughing at. It's a lot bigger than what you may be focused on.
I receive it, Ken. I receive it. Courtney?
My takeaway.
All right. They were not laughing at you, Carrick. They have
Oh no, yeah.
conversations.
Yeah, no, I got you.
Go ahead, Courtney.
My takeaway now is based on what we were just reading in Mark. I think I got to change my question around. It's like, do I obey, or I should say, do I believe my senses, or do I believe what God says? And I'm thinking about Jairus, like the 3 examples in that chapter, but he basically told Jesus, like, come to see my daughter so that she can be well, be healed, and be alive. Like, it was 2 parts to it. And it just showed me on the way, on the route there was the woman with the issue of blood. There's the centurion, right? And when he comes, his child is asleep, as Jesus says. But it was 2 parts. He asked if you be healed and also be alive. And so even Jesus asked people to leave, just not to shake up Jairus's faith. So that faith is, again, such an important part of for us. Like, Jesus is doing these things to in this situation, Jairus's faith was being tested the most out of everyone's. But I just see that there's this faith that we need to have that is beyond our senses. You know what I mean? And this is Jesus trying to push us to that.
Word. Shariga, can you restate your takeaway for us?
Jesus was all God while on earth.
That was your takeaway?
That's it.
Oh, okay, good. All right.
Facts.
How about you, Cliff?
I guess my takeaway. First, I apologize for coming on late, but I appreciate you all still allowing me on. I guess my takeaway is that I truly do need to start to acquire Christ's perspective on things. I need to start moving in that direction as best I can, because this is a definite paradigm shift for a lot of things in life. Yeah, so I'm gonna leave it at that.
Word.
That's my takeaway.
And my takeaway is it was refined through Kenrick's thought to Luke 21:34. Be careful, or your hearts will be weighed down with carousing, drunkenness, and the anxieties of life, and they will close on you suddenly like a trap. That anxiety of life's peace, when you are here in real time, in the reality of your experience, it can alter and shift your perspective so severely that you could get caught up in that whirlwind. And I need to take greater care because I feel like I'm getting or have been sucked in, where I wasn't as much before, but the realities of life have. You actually have to live here, right? You actually have to. You have to go through the things that are happening here, and depending on the level of engagement you have with that, it could shift you away from having a Jesus-like perspective. So I have to be careful. That was mine. Batman was still talking, and he said, Jesus and Enoch's perspective was the same. They relied on God completely, and it was counted to them as righteousness. And I think that's also a powerful takeaway, to believe God completely or rely on God completely. I guess even as you navigate this space and this life. All right, we are at 10:16. Thank you guys for your contributions and your conversation. This was, as always, it's a pleasure to engage with you and to hear the kinds of things that you guys are thinking about, and to be challenged in the thought, and then to be encouraged in the word. So thank you very much. Does anybody want to pray to close us out? Or is anybody willing to pray to close us out? We want to volunteer. Typing is a whole lot easier because you could get it right the one time when you hit send, but then when you speak, you have to edit it. Anyway, anybody want to pray? Sorry. All right, I'll close in prayer. Father, we thank you again for your spirit that leads us and guides us into truth. So we thank you for the way you have brought the word to touch each of us in a way that we each needed right now, and for allowing us to have this moment to be stirred, to be challenged, to be encouraged, to be more faithful to you. Help us to not just be stirred, but to be stirred enough to move to the next step, which is to rely and trust you completely. Is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. We on again first Friday in June. That is the 3rd, Friday the 3rd. Friday the 3rd, we're on again. That's a significant day for me. Yeah, June 3rd. If you haven't already joined us in our reading plan, join us in our reading plan so that you can follow along with our conversations. This conversation can seem very random and haphazard if you're not reading with us. It makes a lot of sense to us because we're here, but I can understand if you're watching on and you're like, where are they going? What are they talking about? So I encourage you to read with us and study with us. Until the next time we meet, drink up, drink deeply. The reading plan is available in the app. You can download it from the internet. You can order a hard copy by emailing us at info@waterforthethirsty.com. We'll send it to you for free. Just send us your address. I'll pay for postage if you're not living in China, because then we'll have to have a conversation. Then the digital copy might be what's better for you, and you can print it from over there. I'll even send you the print ready files. Anyway, I'm being silly. Good night, everybody, and have a good evening.